Well, good afternoon, Michiganders. It is Tuesday, January 18, 2022. And of course, this is Tuesday with Tom, Michigan's only weekly internet show where we do answer your questions about estate planning and estate settlement in Michigan, and we don't send you a bill. As always, I'm your host, Tom Doyle, estate planning attorney, lifelong Michigan resident, and ambassador for all things good in this great state of Michigan. Welcome to today's program. But before we get started, just a reminder that if you head on over to the Tuesday with Tom website, you'll see that you now have the ability to conduct a search of the 200 plus podcasts that we've had. Simply enter in your search terms and it will give you a list of podcasts in which I have discussed those terms. So head on over to tuesdaywithtom.com and search for topics that are of interest to you. Well, last week's episode, 2022 tax review, I talked about a number of important tax changes that can impact somebody's estate plan that they either already have or that they're looking at putting together in 2022. And included in that discussion is the amount that you can now gift annually to an individual. So if you're taking a review of your estate plan at the beginning of the year, looking at tax issues at the beginning of the year, or consider putting a plan together, I invite you to listen to last week's episode. Today's show, we're going to talk about the 12 estate planning questions that might make you squirm. But please remember, what I'm about to discuss during the program is, as always, for educational purposes only. It is not intended to be legal advice. You need to work with your attorney to determine what is appropriate for you and your estate plan. 12 estate planning questions that might make you squirm. Oftentimes, in putting together the estate plan, there's going to be important questions that are asked by the attorney who's looking at putting that plan together for you. And some of those questions might seem very personal, and some of them might make you uncomfortable in being asked or answered. But it's not because we're just trying to be nosy. There are a number of things that sometimes clients haven't thought about that we need to think about in putting together a complete estate plan for you. So today we're just going to talk about 12 of them that are common ones that oftentimes might make somebody uncomfortable as part of their estate planning practice. One of the first, if you have minor children, who is going to raise your children if both parents die? You need to think about that. Oftentimes, we'll have young parents come in to talk to Amanda and myself, and they'll be talking, we don't own anything, so we really don't know why we need to put together an estate plan. Well, in many of those cases, in all of those cases, truth be told, if you have minor children, setting aside what you own, the decisions that you are going to make about who is going to raise your children if both parents die is the most important consideration in putting together an appropriate estate plan for you. So, who's going to raise your children if both parents die? And obviously, that's a discussion that you and your spouse need to have before you come into the office. We don't want that awkward discussion to be taking place where nobody has thought about that. And oftentimes, parents might have disagreements over who it is that's going to be raising the children. So you need to sort that out before talking to the attorney. Question 2. What do you want to have happen with what you own if you all die in a common disaster? It's what we in our office often refer to as the ultimate distribution. But you might be sitting there saying, well, I want things to go to my spouse. And if spouse isn't alive, then we want things to go to children. Well, ask the next question. What if no spouse or any children or perhaps even grandchildren survive you? Now, what do you want to have happen to that estate? Because if you don't plan for it, the state of Michigan has already put together a plan for you, and it might not be what you would want to have done. Number 3, are there any descendants that you haven't mentioned? Are there other individuals that you haven't talked about that we need to consider in putting together that estate plan? I had a client a number of years ago was telling me that at the time that they got married, one of their siblings disclosed to them that they had actually fathered a child out of wedlock that the client didn't even know had occurred. That's what we're really talking about. Are there other individuals out there that we need to know about? Because children are children, not necessarily just because they're children of a current marriage. So those can be important. That can be important information in putting together your estate plan to make sure that either everyone is being accounted for or people are being omitted that you don't want to receive part of your estate. Along those same lines, have you told us about all the other important relationships in your life? It might not be that they're actually descendants or heirs. It might be other important relationships in your life. I know I've mentioned before in other programs about the client of mine who was in her 80s. We had a long conversation. She was thinking about getting remarried. And at the end of that discussion, she asked me a puzzling question initially, and that is, if I get remarried, is it going to be in the newspaper? Well, she lived in a small town. I figured it's most likely going to be in the newspaper. And my question to her was, why does that matter? Well, it turns out the man she had been living with for 25 years, who she represented to everybody that she was in fact married to, wasn't married to her. They simply lived together. That can be important for us to know to make sure that we're putting appropriate things in place as part of that estate plan, because it does legally make a difference. If she simply had a plan and she kept referring to my spouse, but they weren't in fact married, that reference to the spouse in and of itself wouldn't be complete. So are there other important relationships in your life that need to be considered? Another one, because of today's technology, is do you have, and for lack of better terms, genetic material on ice? Do you have fertilized embryos, eggs, or sperm that have been preserved for later use? If you do, what do you want to happen to those after your death? And importantly, as part of that, what does the law actually allow you to do with those after your death? But important considerations in making sure that you have addressed all of the issues that are going to arise as part of your estate plan. Another one today that is becoming more common is that question, are you transgendered? It might not be that you really don't want to disclose that if you're in the midst of a transition or you've already been through one, but that can have important considerations in putting together an estate plan. Often as part of that process, you might have certainly have most likely changed your name, and we need to make sure that things are matching up appropriately for you in putting together that plan. So it's not that we're just nosy, it's an important question that needs to be answered and addressed as part of your estate plan. Question 7, have you ever made large gifts to others? Have you ever, for example, have you added a child to ownership of your home? Or have you given significant sums of money to a child or another person? That can become important because in 2022, for example, you can only give away $16,000 per person per year before we need to start worrying about federal gift tax returns. And in fact, the gift itself might not actually ever be taxable because of the exemption amount, lifetime exemption amount that you have, but that doesn't mean that it didn't have to be reported, and that doesn't mean that if you didn't report it, that you might have in fact committed a tax fraud. That needs to be addressed and remedied in making sure that everything is in order for your estate plan. Number 8, who's going to take care of your pets? Who's going to take care of your pets? You need to think about that. Now you might not need a full-blown pet trust, although those are available in the state of Michigan, but it might be that you're going to want to set aside some sufficient funds to give to whoever that trustworthy person is that's going to be taking charge of your pet. Or if your pet is going to be put up for adoption, where is that going to take place? What agencies are available in your community for those arrangements to be made? In the healthcare area, the generic, when do you want the plug to be pulled? It's important as part of the estate plan, when we put one together, that you have your healthcare power of attorney, in which you're naming the person who's going to make medical decisions for you, and that ultimate decision that you can ask anyone to make for you is to end life support. When do you want that to be done? And importantly, you need to have a conversation with that person too, so that they know when you would want that to occur. Passwords. What are your passwords? Usernames, security questions, all those things that we use to access things on the internet today, our emails, our Facebook, our online banking, whatever it happens to be, information needs to be available. If you become incapacitated and you have a durable power of attorney and you've got somebody who's going to now manage your bank account, how are they going to access your bank account? Or after your death, how are people supposed to manage and access any of the online assets that you have? Number 11 is one that, because of the pass of time, you might actually have even forgotten about. But do you have, if you're married, do you have a prenup or a postnup or a waiver of spousal rights? Do you have, or did you sign a community property agreement if you lived in a community property state? You might have long ago forgotten about those. Maybe they're no longer relevant to your current circumstances, but it needs to be considered in part and parcel of putting together an appropriate current estate plan for you. Number 12, do you have any serious or chronic health issues? Now you might ask, why does that matter? Why does the lawyer need to know if I'm sick? Well, it might be that some of the planning techniques that are going to be used are only appropriate if we're relying upon actuarial tables that are accurate. If your health issues cause you to have a reduced life expectancy, then an attorney using actuarial tables in making recommendations to you about different estate planning options would not be operating on all of the information that they need to have. So, do you have serious or chronic health issues, and how might that impact decisions that need to be made about your estate plan. Now, there are certainly many, many more questions that will likely come up during the course of reviewing and putting together your estate plan. But these are 12 of the common estate planning questions that oftentimes clients might feel uncomfortable about addressing. Certainly, if Amanda and I can be of assistance to you in addressing these questions and putting together an estate plan relative to the answers to those questions, please reach out to us. A reminder, too, that Amanda and I would be honored to have the opportunity to help you protect your loved ones by putting together your estate plan or amending a plan that you already have, or perhaps assisting you in settling a loved one's estate. And because of COVID, we're not currently seeing people in our office. Everything is being done virtually. So you can head on over to the virtual office at doylelawpc.com. There you're going to find information if you're a new client about how we can plan your estate, how you can plan your estate from home, have the ability to schedule Zoom or telephone conferences, and of course you can always download our free estate planning guidebook. If you're a current client, in addition to having the ability to schedule telephone consultations, we have our Update My Plan service that can be used to assist us in updating a plan that we've already put together for you, as well as other information that relevant to current clients. And for everybody, there is our legal store, again available at doylelawpc.com. And through the legal store, you can actually order individual legal documents by simply completing information through the legal store. And those documents can also be ordered through our Facebook page. Well, that's it for today's show. As always, if you have a comment about the program, a topic that you'd like to have me discuss, or questions that you'd like to have me answer, please send me an email, tom@tuesdaywithtom.com, or you can always send me a postcard, Tom Doyle, P.O. Box 16066, Lansing, Michigan 48901. And always, please consider following us on Facebook and Twitter. That would be Tuesday with Tom. And of course, the office is also located on Facebook and Twitter, and that would be Doyle Law PC. Remember, too, the program is available probably anywhere that you happen to listen to podcasts, be it Apple Podcast or Spotify or Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Speaker, etc. And if you have a smart speaker at home, you can always ask your smart speaker to play Tuesday with Tom as well. Thank you again for spending some of your time with us today. And as always, I hope that you have an awesome day and an awesome week in Michigan. Stay safe, everyone. Tuesday with Tom has been brought to you by the estate planning attorneys at Doyle Law PC. To learn how we can help you with your estate plan or with settling a loved one's estate, please call us today at 517-323-7366. That's 517-323-7366.